Ipswich Town head back up the A14 for the second time in a week, looking for some Midlands love in their battle for survival. Join us here on the Blue Monday podcast as we preview Aston Villa versus Ipswich Town. Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Prematch show. Premier League this week after the joy of FA Cup. Seb, you were there in Coventry last week. I wasn't disloyal. Was your week been better on the back of a victory?
It's amazing how it just affects everything. You know, it was a Saturday, 3:15 kickoff, 3 p.m. as good as. It was fun again. Football was fun for a bit. Coventry made an awful lot of noise. Fair play. Underrated crowd at the Rico. I was really impressed with the noise. So it's great having the fans going to and fro. That's something we've missed on a lot of away days so far this season. And yeah, it was just a bit of a reminder of how last season was and how potentially maybe next season might go if we do drop out of the Premier League. But yeah, it just puts you in a much better mood. Let's be honest. You know, you wake up on Sunday, you've scored 4 goals the day before. You've kind of had a bit of fun with your mates, and suddenly it's a lot more happy than some of the recent Premier League next morning, shall we say? But yeah, a nice break. I think we said last week on the show, the break came at the right time for both probably the fan base and the players and the club. So back to it this weekend.
Did you get any of those warm, fuzzy April 2024 feelings going back into the CBS Arena?
I think I mentioned it once or twice to the various people that I saw there. We all that thing where you get there and everyone's like, oh, I was up there in April, and oh, I was sat down there in April. We all did that and reminisced about an amazing evening in our history. And yeah, I mean, the game was a lot more comfortable than that game was. There was no 13 minutes of added time like there was back in April. And yeah, great memories to go back there and maybe hopefully get a similar vibe visit there if we have to go back again next year.
Well, we're here to talk about Ipswich away at Aston Villa, another trip back to the Midlands, somewhere I bloody love. So that's the chunky bit of the agenda tonight. But we want to say hello to everyone in the chat. Ashley's here. Richard, Neil, the quickest off the blocks to get messages out there. We could do with at least a point Saturday, says Neil. Rob is here. Shane chipping in said 3 would be better. It would be, wouldn't it? So let's keep manifesting that positivity, folks. Ipswich old boy, go in there, Seb. We've been talking about this pre-match of the pre-match. We have improved through February every year since the new management team. We will this year, he says. Evenings to Streaky, great to have you with us. Elliot lobbying for Broadhead to start. Evening to Carbos, evening to Tim, our mate down south. Feeling positive, Villery says. Neil, let's get the West Midlands hat trick this weekend. Evening to AD2. Thank you, everyone, for getting involved. If you're a Villa fan and you found us live or after the fact and you want to give us some insights, as long as they're respectful, we very much welcome that. Tell us if we've gone wrong with our script. But yeah, we're here to give everyone the insights and some little nuggets of facts that they can pass off as their own on Saturday afternoon in the Holt End. Not in the Holt End, in Villa Park. FA Cup, we've talked about 4th round. Seb, 5th round draw. Another trip to Midlands, this time the East Midlands. What say you about Nottingham Forest away? Bit meh, isn't it?
The whole draw was a bit crap, wasn't it? Apart from poor Plymouth, who've got to go to the Etihad now. You get past Liverpool and you're probably thinking, you know, get yourself another tie down at home park and they have to go away to Man City. Apart from that, I didn't think it was a great tie. I watched quite a lot of the Exeter game on, was it Monday night, Tuesday night? You lose track of the days, don't you? Yeah, Forest heavily rotated. Obviously, they've got designs on different aspirations this season, so I'd imagine the rotation will be the same for when we visit. So it'll be a really interesting tie. You know, at the 5th round, you're 2 games from Wembley. You've got 3 of the top 4 in the Premier League are now out of the competition. So potentially, you know, we've drawn the highest ranked team still in it. But if they want to finish in Europe and they play their reserves, it's a bit of a dilemma for McKenna because we know the March schedule is quite sparse. We're playing Forest again a couple of weeks later. Then you've got an international break towards the end. So it's an interesting one if you keep the rotation policy you've adopted for the first couple of rounds, or you go a bit more full strength with potentially one eye maybe on Wembley. So a bit of a meh draw. but it's not a million miles away. If you have to go away from home, at least we're not going down to Plymouth or up to Newcastle or something. It's more favourable in that respect. It's a ground we've got an awful record at, let's be honest. But they rotate heavily for the game, so we will see what happens. And obviously there will be a pre-match show before it, discussing all your Forest needs. And I think I get to go corporate again, which will be quite nice for a bit of a change.
We're not just going to say watch the one from November or whatever it was.
Well, no, because they rotate, so it'll be completely irrelevant.
That's true, but we can't predict the rotation. A lot of love for Exeter's performance, and just shame about the penalties. And Streaky would have preferred Exeter. Mate lives miles away. A bed and beer for the night. Shame. You're going to have to find a friend in Nottingham. But as Rob says, a good away day. Always a good atmosphere. As we talked about on the flagship show on Sunday, the Mull of Kintyre / Mull of the Trent, or whatever it is. I'm trying to remember, City Ground, isn't it? Mist rolling in over the Trent. There you go. We've talked about Coventry. I'm trying to find tenuous links here as much as I can. So, Martyn Waghorn, do you want to pay tribute to Waghorn, who announced his retirement at the age of 35? Seems quite young, doesn't it? But
I think he's been without a club for a while. He's kind of banded around the lower leagues for the last couple of seasons, hasn't he? Obviously, one memorable season with us, 2017, 2018, the final year of Mick. Picked him up for an absolute steal, didn't we? Was it like 250 grand from Rangers or something?
Him and Joe Garner from Rangers, both.
Yeah, really good value, and then sold him 12 months later for 5 million. Fair play. Mick could pick a player and did well getting those kind of players in and then getting big fees for them at the other end. Was it 16 goals, 11 assists? I think we looked up in the green room before we came on, in 39 starts, 44 appearances overall. He was the shining light of that season. You think a championship player with 27 goal involvements, if he was 5 years younger at the time, he's probably worth double the 5 million we got to him to Derby, and he might make a move up to the Premier League. But a decent season. Obviously, it ended a bit sourly, etc., when Hurst kind of came in and he wasn't on the bench for the first game of the season, and there was so much umming and ahhing, and Paul Hurst was coming out and saying things like, "We've had a chat and that will remain behind closed doors," etc. But for that season, scored some half decent goals. I think I remember a free kick away at Sheffield Wednesday. Yeah, that kind of sticks in the mind. And unlike 1/7 of the Blue Monday pod team, I thought he took an excellent corner. I'm going to be honest, afternoon, Dave. But yeah, I thought he was excellent from set pieces, and yeah, a decent player that year for a fee, and yeah, got decent money from him at the end. So wish him all the best in his retirement.
Yeah, and did a lot of excellent charity work as well, and community stuff in his time here at Ipswich. So yeah, we wish him all the very best. ITFC Women said midweek victors over Billericay. A bit of jeopardy around that game. Billericay struggling to rock up on time. The kickoff was delayed by 25 minutes or so. And there was a little bit of squeaky bum about whether it would go ahead. And given all the postponements, no one wanted another game to be moved. So fortunately, that went ahead. And given some of the kind of uncertainty and given the form around Ipswich at the moment, 5-0, a pretty flattering scoreline for Billericay, to be honest, but mitigating circumstances. Great to see Lucy O'Brien back on the score sheet, and player of the match, or the player of the match, was brilliant Wednesday night, and some real form building. We talked about the Lewis game that ended up as a draw, but hashtag drew at Lewis Wednesday night too. So difficult place to go. And Exeter, who are currently third of the visitors at the Martyn ground on Sunday. So do get down to Felixstowe and support the girls. They are battling for very different objectives in their league compared to the men. That's going to be a really exciting game on Sunday, and in a couple of weeks' time, a trip to hashtag a top of the table clash there. So games in hand, lots of goals in the goals for category. That's looking really positive. But yeah, a really good time to get a 5-0 win under their belt. And
what was it now? Is it 3? They're 3 points off hashtag, aren't they? But they've got 3 games in hand. Is that correct?
Yeah, spot on. So yeah, and you've got to win those games. But having hashtag as one of them is important. So yeah, it's an exciting time to be an ITFC Women supporter. We definitely encourage you guys to get involved in that if you haven't so far. I think that's it for bits and pieces of news. I think there's some chat in the chat. I think an interview with Mark Ashton might have dropped just before we went on air. So Seb and I haven't reacted to that or seen it. So, or Seb might have.
No, it's popped up saying it's a half an hour with McKenna and Mark Ashton. They've done the usual in front of the night Portman, I presume. So in front of a lit up Portman Road, I guess. So it's probably a review of the transfer window, etc., that we expected a few weeks ago. So we haven't seen it. So I'm sure there'll be reaction to that maybe on the flagship show.
Yeah, I was going to say direct your attention to the flagship show, which all being well, and patting ourselves a little bit on the back for once. If we manage to get one more show in before Sunday, which I have plans for, but it may or may not come off. Episode 900, Seb, on Sunday. Episode 900.
Who'd
You
have
remember
thought
episode 1, don't you?
I've been listening since day one, believe it or not. Who'd have thought back in the day that episode 900 would be us in the Premier League, especially all those god-awful, we always refer to it, the god-awful 0-0 draws that me and Mikey would do instant reactions to and try and think of things to say. Fair play. Yeah, 900 is incredibly impressive, and what a rise throughout the club. I'm assuming Ben and Dave, when they started it, probably thought season 2 might be a Premier League podcast, given we just lost in the playoffs and recruited strongly in the summer of 2015, but we know how it all went. So yeah, an incredible achievement.
Yeah. Join us on Sunday for that one. I'm sure there'll be some reminiscing, and you can give us your insights from whether you've been involved from episode 1 or episode 899. We appreciate you either way. Villa, Seb, we always have to preface this. The Rewind guys, Craig and Dave, mentioned it too. Proper football club. I've got a lot of affection for Villa, as we mentioned last week, as you chastised me, bullied me about last week, living around the corner as I did for a few years at Villa Park. So you can't begrudge me a football fix when I can walk down the road to it. But I love Villa Park, the whole end, one of those kind of really emotional, engaged, energetic away ends, particularly when things are going well. Can be very hostile when it's not, but fortunately for them, things have definitely improved after kind of a bit of a decade, Seb, away from the big time. And we played them in the Championship a couple of times, didn't we? Some playoff disappointment, and then and now appear to be aspiring very much back to where they historically have always been. What's your take on Villa?
Yeah, proper club, sound the proper club klaxon. I think Villa back in September was the first club we kind of described as proper on this podcast. We've done it a few times since with the likes of Man United and Everton, I think. But yeah, Villa Park, an excellent venue. Those stairs leading up are iconic. The whole end is brilliant when it's in full voice. Do you remember we went there we saw Remy Gard's first game, and I think was it Fabian Delph made he went back there having just left Villa to join Man City, and I'm sure the entirety of the whole end was hissing like snakes or something, and it was incredibly impressive. It's a brilliant venue in English football. They've been struggling a little bit this season. I think it's fair to say that their form is relatively. Their form is a little bit inconsistent because they're having to combine, as clubs always do, when you qualify for the Champions League, that does inevitably take a toll on your league campaign, and that seems to be what's happened. But it's worth pointing out they qualified automatically from the Champions League group stage.
Annoyingly.
They didn't have to mess around with the playoff. Annoyingly, because they would have played this week otherwise. Yeah, and they've got a really bad record in league games directly coming after the Champions League, the midweek game. So they have finishing their qualification places for that. They've got Cardiff in the next round of the FA Cup. So that's looking quite favourable for them getting through to the 6th round or the quarterfinals, whatever comes next. And they are 8th in the Premier League. They're not that far off the Champions League. And last year finished 4th. Obviously, this year they're currently 8th, 37 points. They are 6 points off the top 4. Obviously, it might be the top 5 that get into the Champions League next season with the coefficient placings. It's looking quite favourable for English clubs. But at the minute, if we cast it as the old-fashioned way, they're 6 points off the top 4. Played 24 games, won 10, drawn 7, lost 7, scored 34 goals, conceded 37. They're the only side in the top 9 with a negative goal difference, which did surprise me. But they are in relatively decent form going into this. Okay, they haven't won in 3, but they've only had 1 defeat in the last 5, if that kind of makes sense. 2 wins, Everton and Leicester. 2 draws, West Ham and Arsenal. And a defeat to bloody Wolves. After we lost to Southampton on that 3:00 game a couple of Saturdays ago, I felt for sure at least Villa will hopefully do us a favour and rock up at Molineux in a derby and perform. And they simply didn't. So that was their defeat last time out in the league, which we'll discuss shortly. The form at Villa Park is good. They're 5th in the table with 23 points, played 12, won 6, drawn 5, only lost 1 game at home so far this season. That was a 2-0 defeat to Arsenal, I think, back in August. Last 5 at home, 3 wins, Leicester, Man City, Southampton, 2 draws, West Ham and Brighton. So Villa Park is a tough place to go to.
Yeah, and as the chat have talked about here, Norman, shame we play them outside the Champions League games, and after they sign Rashford and Asensio and a few others, we'll talk about the recruitment. They've had a pretty strong window, but to counter that, a lot of injuries that they're having to deal with, particularly at the back, and maybe that'll tell some of the story about the goals conceded. Can't keep clean sheets, so there's some narrative for you guys. We're always kind of giving you those. You're telling me there's a chance moments, so defensively a little bit tricky. Well, not tricky, a little bit what's the word I'm looking for? Struggling to keep clean sheets. There we say.
Yeah.
I'll say
They've got real issues. They've got issues at the back, and they might have an issue up front as well. So
yeah,
it could be seen as, yes, I appreciate they've had a good window. They've looked very good against Spurs last week, but given the personnel problems they've got and maybe betting in new transfers, it might be a half decent time to play them,
Yeah, well, yeah, there you go. Thanks, Seb. Positivity. We're bringing back the positivity on the pre-match show. That's what we want. And don't forget that Celtic victory is in that run as well. That was a pretty impressive win, albeit kind of a bit of a topsy-turvy. Quite an entertaining game, that one, wasn't it? But 4-2, I think it was in the end. So that's in that run too. Any do you want to talk about Wolves, Seb, or should we just move on from that one?
2-0 away. They underperformed on the night, had more of the ball. I think Wolves should have won it by more. I seem to remember, is it Geddes, the striker at Wolves, the forward player, missed a few chances, and Cunha hits them on the break in the last minute and scores, and then comes right out and announces he's signing a new contract. So all our hopes of a deadline day move away from Wolves were scuppered as well. So yeah, just didn't perform. And this has been an issue with the games immediately following European matches. I don't think they've won one. I think they've drawn a few and lost a few.
Well, maybe at the start of the season.
Maybe at the start. Okay, yeah, it's a poor run. And annoyingly, had they drawn with Celtic or messed up earlier in the campaign, they would have been in a playoff tie this week, which would mean they were going into Saturday without the best preparation. But they had a free week, annoyingly, after they beat Spurs last week in the FA Cup.
They did. Unai Emery, are you a fan?
Massive fan. I think he's an outstanding manager. He's been there since November 2022. So they get rid of Steven Gerrard. I think they were outside the bottom three on goal difference. I'm sure I gave you these stats back in September, but they're so impressive. I'm going to reiterate them. He comes in, he wins 61. He finishes the season with 61 points, finishes 7th. He wins 15 out of 25 games, takes 49 points from a possible 75. He sets a new league record by scoring in 20 consecutive games as a newly appointed manager. And then to follow up the next season, he gets them 4th in the Champions League. I think he's an incredibly impressive manager. We all know about his European pedigree. He's won the Europa League 4 times, I think, with a couple of different clubs. He got to the final with Arsenal as well. That seems to be his competition. And I just wonder why, if you're Man United and you're sacking Erik ten Hag back in November, and okay, you might look at Ruben Amorim and he's the latest kind of thing on the on the cool hip young manager kind of circuit, and you like the way his sporting side plays. Would you not look a little bit further down the M6 at Birmingham and see a proven manager who's doing incredibly well? I know Aston Villa are a huge club. I know they're in the Champions League, but if Man United come calling, that's a real test for Unai Emery to turn down. And I just don't really get why he's never in these conversations. You could look at Chelsea as well last summer, potentially. I know, again, Villa are going into a European campaign. That maybe kind of settles that one a little bit. But, Chelsea go and appoint Enzo Maresca. And okay, maybe, again, it's a younger manager. But he's only 53 and his track record is excellent. And I think he's a brilliant manager. And I just wonder why he's not in the conversations for these bigger jobs.
Why? I mean, there's stuff that happens behind the scenes that we don't know. He might be just telling them to piss off and leave him alone. And we've kind of talked about the kind of stature in respect of Champions League qualification, but you also need to reflect on the ownership situation at Man United and Chelsea to a lesser extent in recent years. And he's kind of had his fingers burned at Arsenal, didn't he? He kind of very rapidly dispensed of at Arsenal, probably quite harshly. And so maybe his people have just said, don't come speaking to me. If I want something, I'll initiate it. So leave me alone. And he's getting on really well at Villa. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's certainly United, the kind of post Ten Hag era, it's kind of similar to Paul Hurst and Mick McCarthy, isn't it? You can kind of go from one end of the spectrum to the other. You kind of go for the very young and up and coming, having had the very experienced manager, and maybe that was in their thinking. I don't know, but I think there's some dysfunction about those other clubs, and Villa is a little bit more stable, having ridden through those kind of tough, uncertain years. So maybe that's the theory. But you're right, yeah. I've no other answer apart from that one for you.
You might be completely right. The off-field stuff, I hadn't really taken that into account. It just seems that whenever these big clubs have vacancies, he's very rarely in the running. And at Aston Villa, he's done an incredible job. It seems to be a really good fit, doesn't it? He's got the club going again, like you said. Spend some time down in the Championship. Obviously, we faced them a few times, and kind of, went up with the likes of Tyrone Mings and John Terry, etc., and struggled the first year. I think they stayed up on the last day, didn't they? But then they've really kicked on since then, and it's really impressive. And it's great to see as well, because you want to see these clubs, these kind of giants of English football. You do want to see them competing at the right end of the table. They are one of the bigger boys, and they deserve to be certainly in the top six. I always think of them as a top six Premier League side.
Who are the sides that you don't like to see competing?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I think
no, don't go there.
You can't compare them though. If you compare, I'm not saying it, but Brentford, Brighton, Bournemouth, etc., you can't compare that stature of club with Aston Villa. You simply can't. Even if Villa were 18th or whatever, and those clubs are higher up the table, there are levels in English football, and I think Villa are at the very top of it.
There was once upon a time when Ipswich and Aston Villa, and there are people of a certain vintage, I'm sure, in the chat, who remember the early 80s where Town and Villa were vying for honours, shall we say. So we have some history with Villa, but it's fair to say, Seb, just as it was in 80-81, Villa have had the better of it.
Yeah, not as wide as I thought it might be. 20 wins for Town, 16 draws between the two, and 26 wins for Villa. Push you towards the excellent Blue Monday Rewind. Who knew Craig Fimbo was a former Premier League commentator? Have you dug it out yet? Presumably you're going to retweet it from the Blue Monday account.
He has the VHS. I need to get hold of it and convert it into a digital file so we can put it out there for everyone to see. So
we need to see that. For those who don't know what we're talking about, on Blue Monday Rewind, give it a listen. Craig debuted as one of those fan zone commentators on the red button in the early noughties. So
it's kind of like the early 2000s versions of Arsenal Fan TV and all of that kind of stuff. And all those people, who's the mate of Goldbridge and all those lot, just a little bit more genteel and a bit more, but still a little bit in your face, kind of like whoa, when the team scores. So I think Neil said it's on YouTube somewhere, in which case...
Yeah, Craig did say it's on YouTube, so you need to find it and do a retweet. So push you towards the excellent Blue Monday Rewind. The last time we played there in the Premier League was a 2-1 defeat in December 2001. We also lost the season before, the famous season we finished 5th. We lost 2-1 that year as well. The last game at Villa Park, there's a running theme here, was also a 2-1 defeat. Freddie Sears scored an absolute worldie, but I think he did his ACL, if I remember rightly. I think he got really badly injured and didn't feature for about 18 months or so. That was on the way to us being relegated, obviously. And our last win actually popped up this week, didn't it? It's 8 years ago this week. Emir Hughes scored in the 90th minute after a David McGoldrick run and pullback. That was our last victory there in 2017. I think it was a couple of days ago. So, yeah, 2-1 seems to be an overriding theme of results there in recent years.
But that win, that Emir Hughes win, that was a proper Mick McCarthy S-House. Backs against the wall. Didn't a few players go off?
He changed the formation 2 or 3 times, I think. Yeah. Stephen Taylor started and got injured, so we had to move Knudsen inside to be a centre back, and I think Mick tweaked the system 4 or 5 times. I'm sure Ben and Dave at the time referred to it on the Flagship show at the time and said it was basically pretty much a tactical masterclass from Mick from the sidelines.
Do you remember much? Were you at the 2-2 earlier in the season? I was probably one of until Chelsea, probably one of the brighter afternoons we've had at Portman Road so far this season.
I think we should have won that. Yeah, I think we should have won. 2-2, obviously. Delap got a double. Jack Clark pulled back for the opener. Villa then go 2-1 up. Mistake by Greaves, wasn't it? If I remember rightly, kind of fluffed a clearance and Morgan Rogers pounced. And then Leon Bailey put in a wonderful cross for Ollie Watkins to put them 2-1 up. And then we showed some real character, I thought, in the kind of the second half. Delap went on his run and kind of sat down Diogo Carlos, was it? Sat him down, didn't he, and fired at the bottom corner. And we had some chances. I think at 1-0, Jack Clark had that header, which he kind of put over. Calvin Phillips had an effort from outside the D, which I think Martinez kind of pushed around the post. And then Amari Hutchinson, I think it was, played Delap through on the verge of half-time, I think, in almost a one-on-one. And Martinez kind of sticks out a big boot and it goes out for a corner. So I think we were good value that day, and I think we probably should have won that game. I remember walking back from the ground, driving back up north, thinking we're going to be fine because, Villa are excellent. You and me predicted defeats in the pre-match show because they're an excellent side, and I was really impressed with how we did that day.
We've talked about the recruitment briefly. Do you want to just list the names? I mean, Rashford's the big one.
Yeah,
it's just a lot of... we're not going to talk too much about Marcus Rashford, but that whole situation's not great, and it's quite a sad situation to see that. And the kind of chat and interviews that he had since he joined didn't really, feel like he kind of definitely caveated it. I'm only here for this loan and kind of stuff. And you kind of partly from an England perspective want to see him do well, but it is someone who's definitely kind of maybe similar situation to Calvin Phillips, dare we say. I don't know, but he's probably the big marquee name, isn't he, Seb, that's joined, but a couple of big money signings.
There are and big money departures to fund most of it. So Marcus Rashford is obviously the name you kind of saw when he came on against Spurs last weekend. All the press and all the story was about him. If he starts up front against us on Saturday, will become a bit of a circus and a bit of a distraction point. He's joined on loan from Man United for the rest of the season. We know about his falling out with Ruben Amorim. Apparently Villa are covering up to 75% of his 300 grand a week wage. It was a big investment for Villa for 6 months, but obviously he brings with him a lot of European experience, which is probably what they're kind of looking at, as is the arrival of Marco Asensio. He's coming on loan from PSG. He's won the Champions League 3 times with Real Madrid. So you're kind of adding a lot of European know-how and pedigree into a side that's just done really well in the group stage of the Champions League. That seems quite sensible to me. Axel Disasi. Do you remember him at Portman Road on the 30th of December? He's joined on loan from... He got an assist. He's joined on loan from Chelsea, and he might well play because they've got real issues at the back that we'll discuss later. So fill your boots, Mr. Delap. Andres Garcia is a right back, arrived from Levante for £6 million. And Daniel Malin is a kind of a right forward, but they had to play him, I think, through the middle against Spurs last weekend until Rashford came on. He's joined from Dortmund for £20 million. And it's basically been funded by the departure of John Duran, the worldy sub who seemed to score a world-class goal every time he came off the bench in the opening weeks of the season. He's gone to Al Nassr to join up with Mr. Ronaldo for £70 million. Jaden Philogene obviously came to us for £21 million. Diego Carlos, the guy that Liam Delap sat down on his arse in front of the North Stand before slotting home, went for £10 million to Fenerbahce, and they loaned out former scummer Emilio Buendia, who I'd have had here personally. He's gone on loan to Bayer Leverkusen. So £100 million has come in. They've made a couple of astute loan signings to provide some Champions League experience, a defensive addition through necessity, and I guess with that kind of money coming into the club, they will be very well tooled up to go again in the summer window.
Yeah. Should we talk through the system? Because it feels like it might be two systems very similar facing off against each other.
Yeah, 4-2-3-1 is what they play if you want to put the tactical pad on the screen. So that's the standard lineup last time out against Wolves, the 4-2-3-1, which we know and love from the Premier League every single week in, week out. But it shifts quite interestingly. So the first shift, as always, is to the average player positions. Now, I don't know about you, but when they'll get to where they're going, which is about here, that to me looks like a good old-fashioned 4-4-2. Konza and Kamara, Boubacar Kamara is kind of slotting in at defensive centre-back because they've got issues. He's a defensive midfielder by trade. Digne and Garcia are the full-backs. Bogard kind of drops in from centre mid to kind of plug the gap with Garcia pushing forward. John McGinn tucks in alongside Yuri Telemans. And then up front, Ollie Watkins and Morgan Rogers. That looks to me like a good old-fashioned 4-4-2 with an out-and-out kind of player, sort of a number 10 dropping slightly deeper in Ollie Watkins and Morgan Rogers playing as the last man. If we then shift it to the heat map, so when they're in possession, i.e. where they take the most touches, it does revert more to a 3 again. That looks to me like kind of a 3-5-2, but interesting. Yeah. Still almost an out-and-out front 2, both in terms of player positions and in terms of where they touch the ball. It looks like Morgan Rogers starts as the 10, but pushes right up alongside Ollie Watkins to provide goal threat and support alongside whoever we'll be playing against on the weekend.
And it's kind of, what do the stats tell us, Seb, as well about how Villa might approach this?
So they are not overly possession heavy. 50% possession is 11th in the league. They're decent passing accuracy. That's 85%, which is the 7th highest. They prefer to keep it short. 37 long balls per game is the 3rd fewest, and their accuracy is 2nd bottom. So it's very much a short passing side. Only 15th, surprisingly, for pressing intensity. I don't know if that's a result of their heavy kind of schedule with Champions League games, etc., but not overly intense at the pressing game. Really bad at aerial duels, which surprised me. 10 per game won is the 2nd fewest, behind only Man City. That did surprise me. They're the 4th highest underachievers on XG. Hello, XG fans. XG of 41 so far this season, scored 34 goals. So there are some issues with taking chances, and this is kind of bears fruit for the. This bears true for the shots and the shots on target. 13 shots per match is 14th in the division. 4 shots on target per match is 15th in the division. They are, however, a big threat from set pieces. 9 goals scored from set pieces is the 3rd highest. They're okay defensive-wise from a shots conceded point of view. 12 shots conceded is 13th. They're the 4th highest for fouls per game, so they are a little bit foully. Expect them to be breaking up play, etc. at the weekend. And they are susceptible to counter-attacks as well. 5 goals conceded is the joint 3rd highest from counter-attacks. So very good at set pieces. Probably should have scored more goals than they have in terms of taking their chances. They seem to be struggling there a little bit. And they are susceptible to being hit on the break.
But they'll break through the pitch really quick as well, especially through Rodgers, who just takes the ball and gets them up the pitch, doesn't he? So that's something we need. I think someone put that in the chat about the Spurs game last week. So someone we need to look out for in terms of the
Did you watch that Spurs game? They look really good.
I was on the bus back from Lewis.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, we mentioned Wolves last time out in the league. That Spurs game, they look really good. And then when they brought on the likes of Asensio and Rashford, I think Kev Ellis put it in our Telegram groups, and they basically became prime Real Madrid for about 20 minutes. They did look good that day. Give them their kudos.
Yeah, key players or players to who are kind of a vital part of how they tick. Interesting, you've not called out John McGinn, Seb. They has had issues in the last few years with injuries, but generally when he plays, they seem to win. So I give him a shout out. But the marquee names are the ones we probably already talked about, certainly at the front end of the pitch.
Yeah, I really like John McGinn. Provides work rate, provides energy, tucks in from that
kicks.
Right-hand side. Well, we linked with him, or have I imagined that?
Maybe before he joined Villa, yeah.
Yeah, obviously, maybe. Yeah. When he came down from Scotland, I think maybe passing in dispatches. The main names that people will have heard of, obviously, Ollie Watkins. He is a doubt. He was subbed at half-time in the Wolves game and didn't feature against Spurs in the FA Cup. He's got 10 goals and 5 assists so far this season, scored that header, like I said earlier, in the Portman Road game. Morgan Rodgers, 6 goals, 4 assists, plays as the 10, but pushes right up alongside the striker to get chances. Another Man City transfer error. Cole Palmer's the one that's always discussed, isn't he, in terms of the numbers? But Man City sold him to Borough. He had 6 months at Borough before Villa came calling, and he's producing excellent numbers. He's probably going to be in the next England squad, and I don't know, just another example of perhaps how maybe Man City have sold poorly and maybe replaced poorly, should we say. Yuri Tillemans is really started to hit his form the last couple of seasons. 69 touches per game from central midfield, 4 assists. Amadou Onana is back after a month out. Absolutely massive. I remember seeing him in the Portman Road game. He was huge against whoever he was playing, probably Sam Morsey in central midfield. So he adds a real physical presence. Luca Digne, left back, excellent delivery from left wing crosses. Emiliano Martinez, probably the best goalkeeper in the world for a period, but he's only kept 3 clean sheets so far this season, and he's minus 2.6 in the goals prevented stats, which did surprise me given his, and we all know him for his shithousery and his ability to wind up the opposition, his ability to be, I think Sky did a stat that he keeps possession the most of any goalkeeper in the league, trying to bait the press and wind up the opposition. So I was a bit surprised at those numbers, but they have got some issues. They've got Pau Torres is closing in on a return. He's pretty much been an ever-present under Unai Emery, having been with him before at Villarreal. He's been out since New Year's Eve with an ankle injury. He did a video today where he said something like closing in on a return soon. Hopefully this weekend might come too soon for him. Ezri Konsa subbed off after 30 minutes against Spurs, which is encouraging, but again, he could well be back this weekend. Right back Matty Cash, still a couple of weeks ago. Tyrone Mings, thankfully, the substitution a few weeks ago was not a recurrence of his previous knee injuries, but he does have a slight knock. So he could be involved this weekend, but given his history, I'd imagine he probably won't be. Ollie Watkins, like I said, subbed off at halftime against Wolves with a groin issue, and Ross Barkley's been out for a month, but could maybe make the bench. And for that reason, with the doubts over over Ollie Watkins, you might find that Marcus Rashford starts through the middle alongside Morgan Rodgers in the central kind of attacking roles. Dizazi could well come in straight back into the back line. As I said, Kamara was filling in there last weekend. It's not his natural position. If Konsa doesn't make it, they're really going to struggle for numbers there. So Dizazi could well come back in, which will delight Liam Delap no end.
Yeah, more on him later. Before we look about us, referee watch. Rob Jones from Merseyside, not ref the Town game in about 5 years. Had a kind of cluster of games in kind of between 2017 and 18 when we were on our downward spiral. Only refed 1 Town victory in that time. Ref the 1-1 draw against Norwich in 2018 when John Walters made his triumphant return, short-lived return on loan. Seb, if that gives any memories to you, and also was the referee when we got beat away at Millwall when Paul Lambert was appointed and watched the game from the stands. So,
the 3-0, yeah.
I've not got anything in terms of positivity around the referee, although worth noting that I think first time in Premier League history, a referee was instructed to look at the monitor for a VAR decision and did not follow the instruction provided and overturn his call. I think it was Cucurella versus David Brooks, Chelsea Bournemouth. I think there was a little bit of a hair pull or something tedious, some handbags, and rather than do what VAR recommended, he stuck with his guns. So
fair play to him.
Good on you, Rob Jones. We need more of that. We'll be back after this to talk all about how Ipswich Town and Kieran McKenna will face the challenge of Aston Villa.
Blue Monday is proudly brought to you in partnership with our friends at Atwell Solicitors, your ideal legal partner for work on property or business law. Their client care has repeatedly been recognised as outstanding, and they are people-focused with a plain English approach which sets them apart. They have offices in Ipswich, Colchester and London, and to find out more, head to atwells.com.
Thank you to Atwells. Thank you also to One Stop Badges. We are starting to run terribly low on supply of our limited edition Blue Monday badges as displayed there on screen by Seb. If you want to get similar for your podcast or charity or brand or anything like that, 10% promo in the link in the description. We also appreciate any thumbs up, 5-star ratings, comments, reviews, what have you as well. Do subscribe. We are closing in on another healthy milestone. It'd be good to get near episode 900 and also tick over another milestone on our YouTube subscribers. So I know it doesn't feel like much for people like us, but it really kind of helps nudge the content out to more people and get more people involved in the live chat and all that kind of great stuff. So if you don't mind doing that before you forget, we'd appreciate it. Flagship show, hopefully episode 900 Sunday night. Ben, Dave, Joe talking about Aston Villa after the fact. We've talked about Blue Monday Rewind. Heartily recommend that. And predictions with Ben and Mikey is also out now. So plenty of stuff to fill your boots on the way up. That's the phrase of the week, isn't it? I think that on your way up the A14, or if you're just hanging around like I was doing last week and doing nothing in particular. And as always, Telegram there 24/7 if you want to continue the debate. Blue Monday, itfc.co.uk is our website. Everything you need is linked there. Seb, I think probably the best news of the day pre-match presser from Kieran McKenna is that Sammy Smodic might make a miraculous return this weekend, having looked to all intents and purposes like we might not be seeing him for quite some time.
Yeah, it looked a bad one with his reaction against Coventry. He obviously went down. I think he went down a couple of minutes before he actually ended up getting subbed off. And I feared the worst because it was the bang in the turf, head in the hands, which normally when a player's reacting like that, you're thinking, oh no, this is a serious one. So great to hear that apparently he's got a chance of making it this weekend. Presumably if he doesn't, there'll be no issues for Spurs next weekend. So that's good news. Connor Chaplin is still out. Sounds like a medial ligament issue. He's been out since Christmas time, I think, hasn't he? Not quite ready for a return yet. And I guess the two big questions will be, will the formation be a bit more like the more conservative 3 centre-backs and therefore the right winger is less attacking and more defensively minded? And the other big thing I'm going to throw at you is, would you make a change in central midfield? So have you got a couple of graphics of what we would do as individuals? So
yeah, do you want me to start with your one?
Yeah, put my one up first. So no surprises. I've gone for Alex Palmer in goal. I think Twanzebe will be the right back. O'Shea, I bring in Cameron Burgess for Jacob Greaves. I don't think Greaves has looked amazing in the last few weeks. I don't think he's looked anywhere near as good since he's come back from injury, if I'm being totally honest. Whereas I think Burgess, again, at Coventry is remarkably solid. You know what you're going to get from him. And I just like the natural link-up he's got with Leif Davis. I think you get more out of Leif Davis with Burgess in the side. So I bring back Cameron Burgess. Central midfield, I would play Jens Kiyust and Calvin Phillips. McKenna in the pre-match presser today has said that Phillips is now injury-free. He's ready to make an impact And I love Sam Morsy to pieces, but I do sometimes think that the extra touch that he needs in central midfield has really hurt us recently. Phillips brings a bag of Premier League experience with him, brings a little bit more Premier League know-how, shall we say. Jens Kuhs is playing really well. So I'd have those two in my central midfield. The three behind the striker, obviously, is very interesting. I guess if you're going to go with the more conservative right-wing role, the only option is Ben Johnson, who wouldn't play as far forward, but I'm going to play Amari Hutchinson right wing, and Ciso for me has to start the one bright spot from the Southampton game, start him in the number 10 role, and then I'd start Broadhead left wing. I think we went to pieces a bit when he came off against Southampton. I think he's the only player at the moment or one of the main players who has that real creative force, and yes, he's not the quickest, but the stuff in terms of getting the ball up the pitch and his vision, I think he's crucial and has to be in there personally. And obviously Liam Delap up front is an absolute no-brainer. So I guess my controversial calls are Cameron Burgess at centre-back, Sam Morsy in central midfield, and is Broadhead a controversial one at left wing ahead of £21 million Jayden Philogene, who scored last week? Maybe. What do you think we will do?
Your controversial thought was Morsy not being midfield, yeah?
Yeah, sorry, yeah. So Morsy on the bench I'd have Calvin Phillips in this one. I'm not saying that would be the case every week. I just think Villa Park, John McGinn, Yuri Tillemans, central midfield, very experienced, playing very well, high levels of involvement in the game. I think we're going to need Calvin Phillips's presence in there alongside Kuhs.
So before I butcher your selection, your predicted selection, or is it your preference, or what?
Yeah, so that's that. Yeah, I don't think he'll do that. No, if I'm honest, I think he probably starts Greaves and Morsy.
So I'm kind of a similar view, Seb. I also think Burgess comes back in. I also think Greaves has had a bit of a challenging few weeks. But I guess I need to come back to you on this because you were at Coventry and I wasn't. Did Calvin Phillips stand out in central midfield to justify the spot over Sam Morsy? Because Morsy obviously rested.
Yeah.
Did Phillips come in and excel?
I wouldn't say he excelled, but then apart from Jack Clark and George Hurst, no one really excelled. You know, it was a professional performance in midfield.
Didn't need to. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, he didn't need to. He got on the ball neat and tidy. There was some nice kind of nice crossfield passes here and there. He was involved in neat and tidy things in position. It's a hard game to judge, isn't it? You know, you could look at Jack Clark that day and think he was excellent because he was, 2 goals and an assist, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's then right for the next kind of, the next round of Premier League games. So it wasn't so much a case of Calvin Phillips excelling. It was just that we're on a 4-match successive losing streak. And I do think we are being overrun at times in central midfield and outthought maybe at times in central midfield. And therefore, I think potentially a change is needed in that department.
Fair dues. I've stuck with Morsy. I didn't hear much. Admittedly, wasn't there. I didn't see it with my eyes. But the fact that Morsy was rested, I think for me means he comes back in. But I happen to agree with you that I think the way that you get the best out of Calvin Phillips is to play him week in, week out. So that wouldn't surprise me, but I've stuck with Morsy. I've also gone Hutchinson and Enciso, but I think Jack Clark's heroics last week should earn him a starting spot. I think you're probably right. I think Broadhead will probably come back in. I agree with you. Excellent versus Southampton, and his substitution seemed to be the beginning of the end for us in that one. But I also think that Jack Clark did what he needed to do last week, and I love that. His first goal, our second goal, vintage Championship Clark. And if you can kind of harness some of that positive attacking play, goal contributions in the Premier League, then we've got a gem on our hands. So I want Jack Clark to play because I think that's great, and I'm kind of invested in him. Now I have to abandon my love of Aro Muric. So I want Jack Clark to be the guy, but I would expect Broadhead to come in. And I think, give us your thoughts in the chat, by the way. We'll go there next. My suspicion is Ben Johnson might come back in, Seb, down that right-hand side. I have a sense of a repetition of the Spurs system. What's your thinking on that?
Yeah, like I said, if it is going to be more of a kind of 3 at the back system, then he provides that kind of natural depth in the right-hand channel that Wes Burns does so well. You can mix the defensive abilities with the offensive duties, and I'm not sure that's necessarily Amari's kind of forte. Amari Hutchinson, you want in that wing to drive and run at people and cut inside on his left foot, get shots off, get crosses in, whereas Ben Johnson will be more kind of discipline. Luca Digne down the left does like to get forward. He's got excellent delivery from his left foot, so he is a threat down there as well. So potentially it might be more sensible having Ben Johnson there just to kind of firm up our right-hand side.
Question from Norman: would Burgess cope with Watkins' pace, assuming he's fit?
Assuming he's fit. I mean, if we'd have sat here 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago, we'd have said, oh, we're in trouble because if you turn Cameron Burgess on the halfway line, he's never going to recover. But he's adapted his game brilliantly to some really pacey strikers, I think, in recent times. O'Shea is no slouch alongside him. And with his kind of Burgess's reading of the game and his ability to, get a head in there, get a leg in there ahead of the attacking players, I wouldn't worry about that, in all honesty.
No, quite a lot of love for your selection. A lot of love for Broadhead here from David. Form is temporary, class is permanent.
And he was great again last week when he came off the bench. When Schmodic went off injured, Broadhead came on and he was excellent again. And he did very few efforts on goal, but in terms of driving us up the pitch and making crucial passes to play in others, really, really good, as he was against Lambton, as he has been, to be fair, I think, in most games since he came back into the side.
Fair thought here from Stevie. We have talked about it on the pod. The constant changes to our starting 11 is what's hurting us. Some sympathy with that. Said when we were going to change it from last week by virtue of being the cup. I mean, with Palmer coming in, I think we're all on board with that. Seemingly there's consensus on Burgess. So apart from Townsend coming back out, there's some consistency, a little bit of consistency there, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it was all going to be a massive change after last week, given the heavy rotation that we kind of do in the FA Cup. I do think that there's been, every game seems to be 3-4 changes, but I think that's just more natural at this level because of the demands of the Premier League. I know there's more games at the Championship, but we've heard players come out in interviews this season and say the physical recovery after a game is like nothing they've ever experienced before. So I do think that's probably the primary reason. You've got an awful lot of players here playing at this level for the first time, and therefore the recovery is longer, hence why we have A, more injuries, and B, more changes week on week.
Yeah, Norman suggesting Burgess, he doesn't believe Burgess can keep up with Watkins. Can Greaves? Norman suggesting Greaves
well,
is
in
more
a straight foot race, I'm not sure many of them would keep up with Watkins or Morgan Rogers.
True, but if it was here's a question for the chat: 100-meter race, Burgess versus Greaves, who are you backing? Who are you backing, Seb?
Jacob Greaves would probably be faster. Yeah, I just think that Cameron Burgess, for me, I don't think he's let us down in about 2.5 years now. Even when he came in the side when Greaves was injured and played, was it 5-6 games on the bounce? I thought he was excellent. So I'm not sure at the moment you get that much more from having Greaves in the team compared to Burgess. But I do think with Greaves in the team, you do suffer a little bit with that natural link up with Leif Davis.
I appear to have triggered everyone. I'm playing devil's advocate. A lot of love for Greaves' pace there, so we'll stick with that. But I think the consensus, at least from Seb and I, is that we think Burgess has done enough to earn his spot back. The only man who knows is Kieran McKenna. We'll find out at 1:45 on Saturday. Get your thinking caps on for predictions. That's where we'll finish. But dare I say, thank goodness, a streaky had to depart early. One less bit of abuse that I'm going to suffer in this week's FPL feature. Thank you to our friends at Brett Vale for their support of the FPL feature. Totally meaningless. It's a routine thing for Seb, just battering me every single week. But I take it. I take the punishment. I keep coming back. What does that say about me? Running towards adversity. That's what I'm doing. Membership fees frozen at Brett Vale Golf Club at 2024 prices. If you join now, your membership will run all the way into next March, end of next March. 15 months of golf for the price of 12. Not great conditions out there at the moment for golf, but if you're not a fair weather golfer like me, or if you're waiting for it to improve in the spring, head down the A12 just from Copdock to Brett Vale, near lovely Constable country. Give them a shout or head to bretvalegolf.co.uk to find out more. And they'll credit your membership card with £25 to be used in the bar or the pro shop if you tell them that Rich is crap at FPL. Seb played a triple captain chip last week, so Salah did the business for you. You basically doubled me there. Nice chunky gap opening up there. Anything you want to remark on that?
No, just Mo Salah, 3 goals and an assist in 2 games, triple captain, boom. Thank you very much. We move on. What's the gap now? Is it over 200 points yet?
What's the point? What's the point, Rich?
Yes, it is.
It is over 200 points. Yeah. So I've had to react. Do you want to go first, and then I'll surprise you with basically an identical lineup to yours?
You can do. So obviously Liverpool and Newcastle getting through to the final of the League Cup means there is another double game week for Liverpool and for Aston Villa this week. So I have kept Mo Salah as my captain because he's playing twice again. And I've got rid of Phil Foden, who has been crap since I bought him in, since he scored against us. And I replaced him with Morgan Rogers, who I've been praising for the last half an hour or so. He's obviously got us at home and then Liverpool at home. So he's come in as my vice captain. Apart from that, very few changes. I've put Ola Anya on the bench to enable me to bring more Rogers in the central midfield. No other changes. My ITFC contingent, as always, is Amari Hutchinson and Liam Delap, with Leif Davis and Nick Pope that is definitely allowed on the bench.
Whatever. Enjoy your Cheetah Bix for breakfast. So there you go. You've cursed Aina.
Oh, sorry, I've made another one. I just realised I bought Virgil van Dijk in as well, didn't I? Because they're playing twice. So I have made another. I've made 3 changes.
Did you use points for those, or have you accumulated some free transfers?
I've got, because it's been so easy every single week, I've made very few transfers throughout the season because I just look at it and go, that'll beat him. So I accumulated 4 or 5, I think. So I cashed in 3 of them. So unfortunately for you, I've not spent any points.
Yeah, fine. Well, I've used a wild card. I had to do it for the very exact reason that you talk about, and I have to do something drastic. So Mo Salah's finally in.
He's just bought in Axel Disasi.
He's going to play. He's got to play. He might get a clean sheet on Saturday, let's be honest. So
he might do. He might also get away a penalty or score an own goal. But sure.
That's true. Also true. So I've had to bring in Salah. I just can't not. I've also brought in Van Dijk. Had to do that. But I've looked ahead. I think Bournemouth have got a good run of fixtures coming up. Some underrated players there. Cliver as a midfielder, I think, is good value. I've also brought in Morgan Rogers, and I vice captained him. So I think really it's whether Isak scores or Gakpo scores, and Gakpo's got a double game week. Have we both got Palmer? Yeah, we do. So it's Ahmad versus who is it for me? I guess it's Enciso. I've shown loyalty to Enciso. I think there's some magic there. And at the back, Guardiol versus Kirkes. Southampton away, they've got, and Disasi. Come on, mate, help me out. I've got Gabriel on the bench. I've also brought in Mateta, but that's for next week. I couldn't get him in the team, and I wanted to play my bench boost, but I could only play 1 chip at a time. So there was really...
I have to ask, why have you not played triple captain with a double game week?
I can only play 1 chip at a time.
Okay, but if there's no more triple game weeks, you're basically sacrificing the triple captain chip, aren't you?
At some point, I'll bring in Haaland and try and go,
fair enough.
I'll figure it out. But yeah, I can only do 1 thing at a time. And frankly, I needed to get rid of the old and bring in some new. Alex McCarthy is my ex-ITFC alumni inclusion from the bench goalkeeper. So there you go. What will be on that front. It'll probably be, Seb will beat me by about 2 points or 3 points now, but at least I've tried. And at least I've removed the Mo Salah dimension, which has frankly killed me all season. So we'll be back next week to see how many points Seb has won by. Get your predictions in. That's where we're going to next. Yeah, a lot of people, Delap is going to destroy Disasi. Neil, Disasi versus Delap 2.0, making me feel really warm and fuzzy, guys. Thank you so much. I just keep walking into these mistakes. I'm like, it's like Curb Your Enthusiasm, the FPL version. Seb, predictions. I've got a scoreline in mind. We've already mentioned it. I'm going to see if
we might be going the same then. I've got 2-1 as a very popular scoreline at this ground, 2-1 to Aston Villa, and that's exactly what I think it's going to be at the weekend. Now, you can say we're being negative, etc., but we did both predict defeats in the September game and ended up drawing 2-2, so use that as an omen. I just think they've had a free week. They looked really good against Spurs in the FA Cup last weekend. Yes, they've got some issues at the back, so hence why I think we can get a goal. I think Enciso is going to score for what it's worth. He's my pick to score this weekend. But I think in the end, they're greater firepower with the likes of Morgan Rogers, Rashford, etc. will take its toll. They are very good from set pieces, so I would not be surprised if I know we're very good at defending set pieces, but I wouldn't be overly surprised if they were to score one. And yeah, I just think Villa Park is a tough place to go, and I'm afraid I think that the winless run is going to extend to 5 games.
2-1 is the most frequent scoreline, as into the home team, Ipswich Town versus Aston Villa in our history, just by one. 8 times it's cropped up, and quite a lot in recent history. Certainly, we were talking about the 2000-2001 season when they doubled us. Didn't they double us 2-1 home and away?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
So, and Lee Hendry scored a pretty excellent goal in that 2000 game, didn't he? That sadly soured by that really horrible injury to Luton Nillis, wasn't it? But yeah, so Villa have got that track record, and I agree with you. I think I'm hoping that we see better than Southampton, and I hope we kind of contribute to the game in an attacking sense. And then if you get picked off by the odd goal, it's away from home in the Premier League. It's no embarrassment to that. But as the chat seems to be talking about, and as David is reminding us, DD predicted, the Rewind Show predicted a draw Saturday and a win against Spurs. What's not to like? So we would both take that situation. Aidey's going for a 2-2. Neil also going for a 2-2. O'Shea first goal. There you go. He showed some working. Colin also going for the 2-2. Rob has kind of joined us on the naughty step with a 2-1. Another 2-2 from Stevie. Stevens going for a 3-1. Also asks about whether we've talked about the ITFC Women match right back at the start, about 5 minutes in, Stevie, if you want to go back and confirm that. Amanda's going for a 2-2 for the third year. February run starts now.
We are forgetting the Valentine's Day. Yeah, we haven't taken that into consideration, have we? 2023, Bristol Rovers away, 0-0. The run started. Was it 13 out of the next 14 league victories? And obviously last year, was it Millwall away, 4-0? We went to win 9 out of 10 games. So history suggests that Aston Villa are banging trouble on the weekend.
We're manifesting it. David's... this is a brave prediction. Smod's the score and Brody in the 2-2. We won't see Smodits, will we? At least not from the start.
We could be 2-0 down. You could come off the bench and set up a rousing comeback. That'd be great. A lot of
the 1981. There's some long memories in the chat. Beaten 3 times. David beaten 3 times. They still nick the title. Proof, Seb, if ever, that football fans have the best memories out of anyone. Let it go, guys. Let it go. No, that's what being a football fan is all about. And Aidey's loving your positivity, Seb. Our mate Anthony mentioned that it was strange to hear you being so positive, but I think that's what we want. Let's put the past behind us. It's about the sprint to the finish now. So hopefully that starts this weekend. Aston Villa and Seb and I are both wrong with our predictions. Craig's gone for a 3-0. I'm not even going to ask you to qualify, Craig. I'm going to assume you're a Town fan. I'm going to presume that's a 3-0 Town victory rather than drill into that any further. We'll take it. We'll end with some positivity there. Any final thoughts, any observations, questions for Seb before we say goodbye? Now is the time to get them in. A reminder, I think, Seb, you need to sign us off. Do you not? Or is it my turn? What happened last week? I think it was you, wasn't it?
We lost to Southampton. So would I have done it? And then we beat Coventry?
Oh, I think it's you, isn't it? Let's go with that. Okay. I'm happy, given your vibing tonight and everyone's loving that and you're dominant in FPL and all that kind of stuff. That to me feels like the right place to end it. A reminder, the Flagship show's back on Sunday night to talk about the game after the fact. Ben, Dave and Joe, do give us a thumbs up and a subscribe. As we said, we really appreciate that. If you're listening in podcast land as well, we very much appreciate you guys as well. Do let us know you're out there. A 5-star rating, podcast review, very much appreciated in your app of choice. The Blue Monday Telegram there is there for you 24/7 if you want to continue the debate. Blue Monday, itfc.co.uk, all the links you need. Thank you as ever for the chat, for keeping us going, for keeping us on our toes, for giving us some instant feedback, some instant criticism of our FPL choices and other such things. We appreciate you. And we will be back next week to talk about Spurs, Seb? Spurs. And I will let you sign us off. Don't go too quick because I'm going to put some stuff up on the screen and then give me a wave and then I'll be ready to press the button. So we time
a wave, a subtle wave. Okay, no problem. Yep. Thank you to everybody for watching. Please do that nerdy stuff that he loves about clicking thumbs up and commenting and all that jazz. Thank you to you for hosting. Back to the Premier League campaign. The FA Cup was fun. It was a nice distraction, but it's over. We're back to the real stuff, and Villa Park is a great away day. Let's be honest, I appreciate the fact that it's a difficult season. Some of these away games do feel like a bit of a slog at times, but it's an excellent away day. It's a proper behemoth of English football, and it's a ground and a club that we should be privileged to go and visit because, we're Ipswich Town. We should be playing against these level of sides rather than Bristol Rovers away, Forest Green away, etc. You can't point me there. I'm perfectly fine saying that against those kind of level of clubs. So enjoy it at the weekend. Let's make ourselves loud. The whole end will be loud. Let's shout back and make sure they know that we are in town. And as always on this show, I will sign it off with the farewell of "Come on, you Blues."